Hello and welcome to Act 1, Scene 3 of our journey through Othello. And this is where we are right now. There we are, Scene 3. I feel like I should make a little beeping sound. Okay, so Act 1, Scene 3. And the action moves to the Senate. So this is the seat of government of Venice. And we've already heard a little bit about what's happening through dialogue in earlier scenes. We know that there is an emergency and Othello has been summoned there. So what we have again is the scene starting in media res, and the idea of it starting in the middle of a conversation, and you've got essentially the government here, the government of Venice, headed by the Duke, and they're looking through these latest military reports. So there's no composition in these news that give them credit. My letters say 107 galleys and mine 140. So there's a bit of a kind of fog of war thing going on here. They don't know how large the Turkish fleet is. Mine 200. So often in war, numbers like this are uncertain. But Shakespeare's doing it because it's building up suspense. So there's a sense of there's this threat. They know it's a big fleet, which is essentially what the Duke deduces. But the main article I do approve in fearful sense. So we don't know exactly how much it is, but we know it's a big fleet. That's a serious enough problem to actually deal with it. We have a sailor enter. A messenger from the galleys. Now what's the business? The Turkish preparation makes for Rhodes. So there is a sense of impending danger coming in. So we've got this threat. So part of this with the play is that there's a bit of misdirection from Shakespeare, because we've obviously already been introduced to this domestic story of Desdemona and Othello, and then there's tension with Brabantio, and obviously we know about Iago's jealousy, we know about Roderigo's motives about Desdemona. And now we've got this other element of saying, oh, well, there's this impending attack and we need to do something about it. And Othello is obviously the high-ranking general that they're going to want to deal with it. But, keep an eye on this as it goes on. Just keep an eye on it and you'll see what happens. So if this was the modern age and you were making this for TV or film, a writer and director would probably convey this through TV news footage. You'd have fictional TV news footage of the idea of a dangerous situation constantly evolving. So they think, no, he's not going for. They're not going to Rhodes. Where are they going to attack? So they know it's going to be Cyprus. Their purpose is towards Cyprus, which I didn't highlight for some reason. So effectively, this is like rolling news coverage of, as they get information from various sources, they say, oh, this fleet is building up, they're heading towards Rhodes. No, they're not. The fleet is actually uniting to make an even bigger fleet, and they're heading towards Cyprus, which obviously Venice has got vested interest in as well. 'Tis certain then for Cyprus. So they're thinking of it. Marcus Lucius, is he not in town? He's now in Florence. Write this from him. Post-haste dispatch. So the Duke looks like a decisive leader here as well. First senator, interesting this one, I think, because here comes Brabantio, who is a senator himself, and he is obviously part of the Senate. He's part of the government himself. And this senator describes the Moor that's Othello, as the valiant Moor. So obviously we know there's to modernise, there's obviously problematic use of Othello's ethnicity to describe him as a character. So this is an example of, I can't remember if I've said it before, antonomasia, which I might spell on here actually, by the magic of the internet. It suddenly appears on the page, look at that. Antonomasia, so that is when, what's happening is they're referring to Othello by a quality associated with him, and unfortunately that quality is his ethnicity. Even though this character, I'm just moving the thing, that's not going to happen, slight technical error there, but this senator actually does respect Othello, but here comes the valiant Moor, because valiant is a positive adjective, it refers to his bravery and heroism, but unfortunately the antonomasia there is the idea of oh, we're just going to refer to him by his race. But it's common in this, but you could say as well, you can make a point out of it because Shakespeare keeps emphasising how much of an outsider Othello is, even though he's kind of associated with and connected with the establishment. He is always going to be an outsider because of where he's come from and the colour of his skin. It's always, and you could say that's what Shakespeare is presenting. Then we have the Duke, again addresses a valiant Othello, but at least this time the Duke refers to him by his name. So that's nice. We will straight employ you against the general enemy Ottoman. I always make the joke about these being giant otter people, which is an amusing image, but unfortunately it's not the case. It's the Ottoman Empire, which was a very large empire. It was a Turkish empire, and it's an Islamic empire, which is got some other interesting extra context attached to that as well, which I was going to save for later, but I'm going to say it now. Othello must have converted from Islam to Christianity, and the play doesn't really discuss that much. It's just assumed for Othello to be in the position he's in, working in the culture that he's working in Venice. It's a Catholic, it's Italy, it's a Catholic country. He must have converted to Catholicism he from Islam, and there's no discussion of it. But, of course, he is going to be sent to fight the Ottoman Empire, which is, as I say, it's Turkish, it's from Turkey, it's an Islamic empire. So I can't help but wonder if there is another nod here to the theme of betrayal in the play. The very fact that Othello is converted from his religion and then he's being set to fight people from his original religion, if you see what I mean. So there's a sense of, I wonder if there is any extra meaning in that, or it's quite possible that as it's not really discussed in the play properly at all, maybe Shakespeare didn't really think of it in that way. But I find it tempting to think of it like that. So we have, I've made my otter joke and hopefully it made you laugh, but we've got, we went to Brabantio, I did not see you, welcome gentle signor, we lack your counsel and your help tonight. So this is clear that Brabantio is part of the elite of Venice. He's known by the Duke, he's addressed in affectionate terms, affectionate salutation as in a greeting, welcome gentle signor. So he's obviously respected. We lacked your counsel and your help tonight. So he's known as being a sensible advisor. So he comes in with what he claims is like an urgent problem. Take hold of me, for my particular grief is of so floodgate and overbearing nature, says a metaphor here, that it ingluts and swallows other sorrows, and it is still itself. So it's an extended metaphor as well. Shakespeare uses the idea of, right, whatever the problem is, I know it's bad, but my problem is even worse. This is Brabantio. Why? What's the matter? My daughter, oh my daughter. If you've done Romeo and Juliet, there's a bit of a kind of echo with that, really. It's quite similar to that. Dead? So if I had my kind of linguistics hat on, I would think about the use of pragmatics here. It's normally not something I talk about in kind of literary terms, but I can't resist talking about it sometimes. Because in everyday conversation, we basically use this thing called pragmatics, which is the idea of context and implied meanings. So the Duke will naturally infer that when one of his trusted advisors, one of his trusted senators comes in, screaming up there, I've got an awful problem, something terrible, it's worse than anything you can imagine, it's flooding out all other problems. You go, What is it, Brabantio? My daughter. Well, naturally, the Duke, through this idea of conversational pragmatics, he would infer that she's dead? Was she dead? This is terrible. Dead? No, it's not that. So you've got Brabantio, you could talk about hyperbole as well. Shall I write pragmatics on? As I say, it's a bit more of a linguistic term, but occasionally I can't really resist talking about it. So this is one of those instances. So now it's magically appeared. And we've got this... Oh, I've done that thing again when I'm starting to move the screen, sorry. So we have I to me, dead, metaphorically, she's dead to me. So it is hyperbolic. Yeah, she's dead to me. She was abused, stolen from me, and corrupted. So this is an anaphoric reference back to scene 1, isn't it? When you've got Iago and Roderigo shouting out, "Thieves, thieves." So there's actually quite a lot of a recurring theme in the play of almost like, I'm not sure how to describe this really, but the art of like mental programming. It's not really, I'm trying to say, the art of suggestion, I suppose, influence, corruption, and sowing seeds of ideas in people's minds, planting ideas in people's minds, very much like if you've ever seen mentalists like Derren Brown. It's that kind of idea. You could drop little ideas and little nuggets of thought into people's head, images and ideas. You might even manage to do it yourself sometimes in everyday life. It's quite interesting to see if you can plant thoughts into people's heads. And that's what's happened here. You can see Iago, we already know that he's a corrupting influence. So all of that emphasis of, actually you can do it a lot through repetition. There's a lot of repetition in scene 1. That thought has really been planted in Brabantio's head. Yeah, she's been stolen. It's like, if you like Star Wars, it's like Jedi mind tricks, but evil. Spells and medicines bought of mountebanks. I love the word mountebanks when we get it in Shakespeare, because it's essentially like phony doctors. If you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, it's like, that kind of snake oil salesman. The real life bit in Wizard of Oz, black and white. You've got the man who turns out to be the wizard and he's a phony. It's like that. That's like a mountebank, like a charlatan, like a phony doctor selling miracle cures. So he's saying he must have bought some spells. He says spells and medicines. He's not specific which one. It's to say, I've just got this image of Othello going in like with a big shopping trolley and stocking up on as many spells and magic potions as he can. This is how ridiculous Brabantio's argument is. I mean, don't write about the shopping trolley thing. That's just me being silly. But he's saying, I can't be, for nature so preposterously to err. Hidden within this, actually, there is some, I suppose really we describe it in modern terms as dog whistle racism. You can't hear it as clearly. It's a bit like that. Again, I wouldn't write dog whistle racism in the essay, but it does expose more of Brabantio's prejudice, because for nature so preposterously to err. So he says, what he's actually inferring here is he's saying that there is no way my daughter would have gone with a non-white man. It's saying nature is erring. It's saying that's what it said, like nature is in error. It's just not in her nature. It's not natural for this to happen, for mixed race relationships to happen. It's not natural. So you see, so he's racism exposed. But this is another one of those lines where you could blink and miss it. And in fact, for some reason, I haven't highlighted it, but at least I'm mentioning it now, so that's fine. Being not deficient, blind, or lame of sense, sans witchcraft could not. Sometimes they would use, that means without. If you know French, that means without. So sans witchcraft. So saying it's got to be magic and witchcraft. And again, in the past, you'll probably know, because some of you may have studied, witchcraft from that era. It is actually a topic that is studied sometimes. And obviously, James I was really interested in witchcraft. And you know that it didn't necessarily mean witches in the modern sense, often associated with women, but a witch could be of either gender, and actually that's still technically true today. So you have sans witchcraft. So he's just saying it's got to be magic. She can't have fallen in love with it. It's got to be artificial. It's got to be fake. And again, you can see here signs of this Renaissance world where they still believe that magic exists. They still believe that that's possible. It's completely, ridiculous. But the Duke, again, he's used to taking Brabantio's word, isn't he? Whoever he be, then in this foul proceeding hath thus beguiled your daughter of herself, and you of her, the bloody book of law you shall yourself read in the bitter letter, after your own sense, yea, though our proper son stood in your action. So he says, right, okay, whoever's done this is really terrible. You're going to get deciding over this. You'll be presiding over this case. You're going to be in charge of it. This is so bad. But does that temporarily until he finds out what it is. Humbly I thank your grace. So this is using the appropriate honorific for the Duke, who's of the high rank. Here is the man, this Moor, whom now it seems your special mandate for the state affairs have hither brought. So again, Othello is referred to by his ethnicity. And again, this isn't necessarily what the Duke would expect. We are very sorry for it. What in your own part can you say to this? Nothing, but this is so. So this is a very important, I'm tapping at the thing at the same time. This is a very important speech from Othello. It can be interpreted in a variety of ways. Now, I see it as Othello presenting himself very confidently. It can be interpreted, we'll discuss as we go through. So he starts off with most potent, grave, and reverend signors. Now you'll notice, if you know about your iambic pentameter and you know about your blank verse, this is blank verse, you could even count the syllables. Most potent, grave, and reverend signors. So you have iambic pentameter there. You can tell that is. So this is an important moment for Othello's character. He's addressing the court. He's defending himself against this accusation. Witchcraft would carry with it execution. It's a serious accusation. And as you know, if you have studied about witchcraft in that era, then you know that the legal process was incredibly, let's just say sketchy, is maybe a mild way of putting it. But notice Othello addresses the Senate in respectful terms. He uses the appropriate honorifics, as you might say, most potent, grave, and reverend signors, my very noble and approved good masters. I have seen some interpretations of this as saying this is to do with reflecting Othello's status, and it suggests slavery and the idea of saying my good masters. Personally, I don't see it like that. I think if Othello was white, I think he would have used the same language. I think it's just the language of the era, and it's just because the society of the Renaissance era is hierarchical. They're obsessed with hierarchies and everyone having their place. So I personally don't see it. However, it's a perfectly valid interpretation, and I've seen productions where you can tell they're playing it like that. I've seen some productions when they're thinking of it in those ways, and they sort of emphasise again Othello's outsider status, and he's always going to be looked down on, and he's always going to. I've seen, and it's valid. It works. Personally, I don't see it. You don't have to agree with me. That's all part of the fun. That I have taken away this old man's daughter, it is most true. True, I have married her. This here, you've got a bit of. This is anadiplosis here, which sounds like somebody's name, but actually it isn't. It's a term. Now this is, you can either interpret to this. Oh, I've done it again, moving the thing. Sorry, and you can either interpret this as Othello being confident, or you could actually interpret it here as he's actually, and you might even say the anadiplosis suggests this, as not being as confident, because it's almost like he actually, like he messes this, you could interpret it as he messes this bit up. So he says, I've taken away this old man's daughter, it is most true. Now that sounds like a confession, you could say, that sounds like a confession. And you think, whoops, Othello, that's not a very good thing to say. Another way of looking at it is you could say, well, he's so confident, he's going to say, yeah, I've taken her, but this is how I've done it, and it's not in the way that he says it. So you can interpret it in both ways. Again, I've seen that delivered in both ways. And there's probably another way, I can't even remember, but I've seen it like that. The confident versus the whoops, I've made a mistake version. So, true, I've married her. So you could say anadiplosis, there's caesura there as well, as in just like when you're studying poetry. So you could say that adds to the insecurity, but you could also use it to justify the idea of he seems confident. That works as well. The very head and front of my offending hath its extent no more. So here, this actually in some ways reminds me of King Lear in a way, actually, but the idea of saying, yeah, it's true, I've taken her, I've married her. It's kind of plain speaking, and you could interpret that as saying he's not very good at public speaking, or you could interpret it as supreme confidence. I wouldn't go as far as arrogance, but I think, supreme confidence is saying, and you could say that he's really just being honest about his relationship with Desdemona and honest about his love. All of this works. All of these interpretations work. You can decide what you like yourself, but always consider different angles. Sometimes the lack of confidence version of Othello, if that's the interpretation, rude am I in my speech and little blessed with the soft phrase of peace. That is often used as saying, well, he's basically saying, I'm a soldier. I'm not accustomed to public speaking. So you could interpret this as he's being literal and saying he's not very good at it, or you could say this is just modesty. This is just him being humble before the Senate. So again, you can decide what you think of it. I think he's being modest because the rest of the speech is very eloquent and articulate. And we've already seen him in scene 2, Act 1, scene 2, where he uses words to diffuse a fight. So when Brabantio's followers and himself are confronting Othello and it's ready, you actually expect a fight to start out. You don't, a fight to start. And we've got that line about a prompter, almost as if Shakespeare plays with the audience expectations to think, oh, yeah, great, there's going to be a sword fight now. Brilliant. Oh, yeah, I love a sword fight. That's superb. But Othello, again, there's lots of subverting audience expectations. So Othello actually, he is a man of battle, really. But in scene 2, he uses words and there's no fight. He diffuses it. Now, that's a sign of a skilled leader, only using conflict when absolutely necessary. I mean, that's to me. So again, he seems to me decisive, wise, and I see him as articulate. So I think he's being modest. Again, you don't have to agree with me. And as I say, different productions play it differently. But so for Since These Arms of Mine has 7 years pith, Othello has been a child soldier. He has lived an incredibly hard life, a life full of danger and adventure, and that includes being a soldier since the age of 7. Till now, and on some 9 moons wasted, they have used their dearest action in the tented field. So this really means that until very recently, he's not been fighting. So he's not been waiting 9 moons, 9 nights. He's not been fighting. He's been fighting all the time. He's been fighting his whole life. You could even interpret it as a metaphor as well, in terms of that fight actually is also extended to his fight for social acceptance in a society where all the cards are stacked against him. You could see it that way as well. It's quite, maybe I'm going too far with that, but I think that's tempting. So, till now, they have used their dearest action in the tented field. So the tented field, that's transferred epithet because you don't normally, tented field, it's quite an unusual combination of words, but it evokes battlefields, doesn't it? And where the encampments before they fight. And little of this great world can I speak more than pertains to feats of broil and battle. So you can see that he's saying, well, most of my life experience, pretty much everything is about war. It's been war my whole life. And therefore little shall I grace my cause in speaking for myself. I think this is ironic because I think he does actually manage to, he actually does succeed in explaining his situation, and again, it's all diffused. Nothing happens as a result. I know spoiler alert, but it's not really a spoiler, is it? Then I will a round unvarnished tale deliver of my whole course of love. What drugs, what charms, what conjuration, and what mighty magic. This is all great stuff. I love all this. So he's going to say, I'm going to give an unvarnished tale, as in I'm not going to over-exaggerate. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'll tell you how I've won his daughter. I'll tell you how we've fallen in love. And he says, what mighty magic for such proceeding I am charged withal. So again, you could argue there is a sense of Shakespeare, again, misdirecting the audience, creating some uncertainty. You're saying, oh, well, okay, what mighty magic has he used? So he has used magic, has he? Has he used magic? But he's saying, I'm going to tell you the truth. Brabantio, being the miserable old git that he is, so actually that's pretty mild, the miserable old racist git. A maiden never bold, of spirit so still and quite that emotion blushed at herself. Well, I don't think Brabantio knows his daughter that well. I think he's got this complete idea of it, because he already said it's against her nature to be with Othello. He repeats it here, look, and she, in spite of nature, of years of country, credit, everything. So he's saying, she's too young because of being from Venice, because of her race. He's saying like everything. How could she fall in love with this guy? She's scared to even look at him. Brabantio, mate, you don't know your daughter. Um, Actually, I wouldn't call him mate, but anyway. It is a judgment maimed and most imperfect that will confess perfection, so could err against all rules of nature. So he's emphasising this whole thing. So it's not natural. Brabantio's like, there are modern racists like this. There are modern racists just like this who think, oh, it's against nature for races to mix. It's not, multiculturalism, mixed race marriages, all this. So, oh no, this is all against nature. You get people. There are people still like this. Brabantio is one of those people. Must presume to find out practices of cunning hell, why this should be. So again, with Othello, because there's this cultural prejudice against blackness being associated with evil as well. Cunning, also, I'm not going to say it because of YouTube rules, but if you're imaginative, you might see there's a subtle sexual reference there as well, but I can't say it because of YouTube, so I'm not going to say it. Okay, so you can work it out yourself. So I therefore vouch again that with some mixtures powerful of the blood, or with some dram conjured to this effect, he wrought upon her. I find this interesting because Brabantio has no evidence of any magic being used or magic spells. If Brabantio had been through Othello's bins and found some empty bottles with love potion written across it or something like that, maybe he might have a case. But interestingly, Iago's just the same. These people, when they're racist, when they're prejudiced, when they decide they hate someone just because of who they are, they don't need evidence. Or they think they don't need evidence. They think they're above it. And Brabantio is doing that. He's got this, so we have, but luckily the Duke's, dram is like, drop of liquid. The Duke is to vouch this is no proof without more wider and more overt tests than these thin habits and poor likelihoods of modern seeming do prefer against him. The Duke, see, some people say, and in some productions I've seen as well, they have the Duke sort of defending Othello out of pragmatism, as in the idea of he's useful to the state, so because he's essentially, it kind of links to the idea of exploitation, the idea of that. So as Othello, as an outsider, because he's a skilled general, he's useful to the state, so that's why the Duke's defending him. Again, I don't see that. I think lines like this to me suggest that and I'll explain this one. I think the Duke supports Othello, values him as a general, as a human being, and this is important. To vouch this is no proof. He's just saying you can't say this without any proof. And he said, and also all you've got is just, he says, of modern seeming. He just means all you've really got against him is that modern prejudice because of his skin colour, because he originated from Africa. Therefore, you think that he's going to use magic, and just because of his skin. So you see what I mean? That's why I think the Duke, I think he's genuinely supportive of Othello. There are wider issues, and you could explore this in like wider literary criticism of, you could say that, again, it still emphasises Othello's outsider status, and he's dependent on the power of white people and white authority figures, I should say, for his position and his survival. I think there's a valid point to consider in terms of that. The other thing is that it's, within the framework of the world that's created, you're going to get a Duke at the top. The Duke is going to be a white noble of Venice. This is the political setup of the place. The Duke seems to favour Othello. He's defending him, and I think he is genuinely defending him. Defending. That's quite a different thing. Genuinely defending him. This is the senator who likes Othello as well. But Othello, speak. Did you by indirect and forced courses subdue and poison this young maid's affections? Or came it by request with such fair question as soul to soul affordeth? So this first senator, who we've already heard, he referred to Othello as valiant, even though he still said more. But I think you can see really with these interrogatives, there's doubts. They say, "I'm not. You can't. This can't be right. Have you really done this? Have you really done this? I do beseech you, send for the lady to the sagittary. That is where they are, like the kind of council chamber that they're actually in, military council chamber, and let her speak for me before her father. If you do find me foul in her report, the office I do hold of you, not only take away, but let your sentence even fall upon my life." So I see here is Othello is so confident in Desdemona's love. So bring her here, and if you ask her this stuff and it turns out that I've done it, you can take me away. You know, he's basically saying, I swear my life on this. So fetch Desdemona hither. Ancient to conduct them. Notice here, Othello, he's addressing Iago. He's authoritative. He's using imperatives because he's a general. Iago is, you best know the place. And Iago in attendance. Iago is, he always pretends to be a loyal soldier and a loyal friend to Othello. So look, he just goes off and does it. But Shakespeare probably didn't write that, so you haven't got to analyse the stage directions. Until she come, as truly as to heaven, I do confess the vices of my blood. So justly to your grave ears I'll present how I did thrive in this fair lady's love, and she in mine. So he's going to explain how they fell in love. Her father loved me, oft invited me, still questioned me the story of my life. I find this significant because, again, we've talked about the theme of betrayal, but imagine how betrayed Othello feels when he would go round to Brabantio's house, have chats with the Brabantio about his life, and Brabantio seemed perfectly interested. And it turns out that all along, Brabantio has been secretly racist all this time. You know, Othello would think, oh, here's a nice guy. I like going around his house and having a chat with him, and his daughter's nice, and I go around there. It's a nice family, and he gets treated. You know, he's obviously like treated well there, and as soon as Brabantio finds out that Othello is marrying his daughter, Brabantio's reaction to the idea of having Othello as a family member is it's a racist reaction. So I don't want you in my family, effectively. So I don't want anything to do with you. So imagine that sense of betrayal. So he said, well, I told Brabantio all about the different things I've done: battles, sieges, fortunes. So you've got tripling there that I've passed. So all of these adventures. So this is mostly, it's all blank verse, but there is disruption to it here. So you've got the lines which are catalectic lines, which means that they're not complete ones. So he's breaking up the blank verse. So maybe this is a sign of him not being as confident. He's having to defend himself. You could count it like that. So all the various adventures he'd had, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth escapes in the imminent deadly breach. So he's had all of these like wild adventures, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery. So he's been captured in the past. He's been a slave. He's escaped. Redemption. This is one of the only hints here of maybe converting to Christianity, of my redemption thence. I think that's pretty much it. It doesn't really say much else because one of the other kind of alternate nomenclatures, as in names of Jesus, is Christ the Redeemer. It's associated with redemption. So that actually, even though I didn't highlight it, that is probably one of the only references we really get to it. So he's had these adventures, sold to slavery. This suggests that he's talking about his conversion to Christianity, even though it's not really dwelt upon. Important to my traveller's history, so he's been into like various landscapes. So these are exciting landscapes. This actually means caves and obviously deserts there. So he's been through all over the place: caves, deserts, quarries, rocks, hills, massive hills whose heads touch heaven. So he's, to Shakespeare's audience, like they know pretty much nothing really about Africa. It's just like a continent of total mystery, and the knowledge people have is through like rumours, stories. For some people it would be books, bestiaries, which would be like collections of animals and things like that. Some of this actually is drawn from there was a medieval explorer called Sir John Mandeville, and Sir John Mandeville claimed to have explored various parts of the world, but modern scholars think, well, you can probably tell a lot of it's made up, actually. A lot of modern scholars just think he went to basically the equivalent of cafes and bars, went to places like Alexandria in Egypt and stuff like that, just sat and chatted to people. And some of the locals, I think, must have been winding him up sometimes, because he would just believe things hook, line and sink. Like there's ideas that there's communities of people with like, like there's dog people and things like there's loads of stuff in it that are completely so so Shakespeare would have read this as well. So his idea, so things about Africa in Shakespeare's time, they would present it as facts, but they're not. Yeah, they wouldn't know. One of the things I love about they would have known, they knew kind of elephants existed because they had those in Roman times even, but they thought that they thought that elephants were like the natural enemy of dragons, which I love that because elephants squirt water from their trunks. So I just love that idea. But anyway, sorry, I digress. Because this bit is relevant though, because the things that this is in John Mandeville's description. So John Mandeville, medieval writer. So he talks about cannibals, and the anthropophagi are the cannibals. And then this is my favourite one: the men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders. So they're not Mr. Men, but this is the idea of these mystery tribes, of these unusual men, of unusual body shapes and stuff like that. So Othello is presenting this all fact. You could present it as Othello's making this stuff up himself to entertain Brabantio. That's why he said it in the past, and he's never really met them. I think framing it from the Shakespearean world, I think it would be presented as that's a fact. They would see that as saying, oh, well, yeah, Othello, yeah, he's from Africa, isn't he? So if he had loads of adventures in Africa, oh, he'd meet those Mr. Men type people with heads beneath their shoulders. Yeah, oh, yeah, definitely. Do you see what I mean? I think they would see it as like a fact. So these things to hear would Desdemona seriously incline. So she would listen to Othello's stories. And then we've got personification with a greedy ear, devour up my discourse. So she fell in love by overhearing these stories. Brabantio loved these stories. Turns out that he was a racist, but Brabantio loves these stories. And Desdemona, who, unlike her father, is not racist, but she just enjoyed listening to the stories. Then, which I observing, took one suppliant hour and found good means to draw from her a prayer of earnest heart that I would all my pilgrimage dilate, whereof by passage she had something heard, but not intentively. So he explained these stories to her as well. And, I did beguile of her tears when I did speak of some distressful stroke. His stories moved her to tears. My story being done, she gave me from pains a world of sighs. I like this. She swore in faith 'twas strange, 'twas passing strange. There's a sense of incrementum there. And 'twas pitiful, 'twas wondrous pitiful. So this is parallel phrasing as well. But again, I think that he's recalling their falling in love with genuine. I was going to say nostalgia is not quite the right. Affection would be better. He's remembering their early relationship with affection like that. She wished she had not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. So you can interpret this as maybe a stronger aspect of Desdemona's character, where she's limited as a woman and she hears of these adventures. She goes like, oh, I wish I could have lived, I wish I could have a life of adventure like you. She's excited by it. And in some ways, like marrying Othello is like being part of that adventure. She can be then, because to the Shakespearean, to the contemporary mind, Shakespeare's time, marriage means that you become one and the same person. So by Desdemona marrying Othello, she kind of links her soul to his, and so she's then kind of absorbing his past and his stories and everything he is. So obviously we think marriage obviously really important in the modern age, but in Shakespeare's time, they really believe in like the soul and the idea of like soulmates and those kind of things, all that stuff. The idea of the soul, that Desdemona and Othello are united as one. And so she sort of becomes him and he becomes her. But the law is all stacked towards the man, obviously. And baby, if I had a friend that loved her, I should but teach him how to tell my story, and that would woo her. Upon this hint I spake, she loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. So we have more parallel phrasing here as well. This only is the witchcraft I have used. Here comes the lady, let her witness it. So he was speaking metaphorically about witchcraft. He didn't use witchcraft, so that senator will be happy, won't he? The Duke, again, always supportive of Othello, I interpret it as, I think this tale would win my daughter too. So the Duke doesn't show any prejudice there. So I think my daughter would marry him after this as well. Good Brabantio, take up this mangled matter at the best. Men do their broken weapons rather use than their bare hands. I say, let's sort this out. Come on, this is this. I pray you hear her speak. If she confessed that she was half the word, destruction of my head if that bad blame light on the man. Come hither, gentle mistress. Do you perceive in all this noble company where most you owe obedience? This really reminds me of King Lear as well. This is very similar to King Lear. So she has to, he wants her. Basically, he wants her to turn up to the Senate, and he wants to say, right now she's going to prove. It's going to prove now because she's going to show her allegiance to me. My noble father, I do perceive here a divided duty. To you I am bound for life and education. My life and education both do learn me how to respect you. This is so King Lear-like. It's uncanny, actually. Notice the caesura here. You are the lord of duty. So at the moment, Brabantio would probably be smiling to this. Okay, yeah, I'm winning here. She's loyal to me. Good girl. Yeah, that's it. But then she says, I'm hitherto your daughter. As in, I'm not your daughter anymore. Caesura there, full stop. But here's my husband. So her allegiance is to Othello. And so much duty as my mother showed to you, preferring you before her father, so much I challenge that I may profess due to the more, my lord. Again, even Desdemona refers to him by his ethnicity, still emphasising his outsider nature. I don't think she has any prejudice at all towards Othello. She wouldn't marry him. She loves him. I don't think it's like that. It's just, I think, reflecting the sort of lexicon of the time, just the language that's used of the time. God be with you. When we say goodbye, that is actually what we're saying. God be with you is what we say. So he's actually saying, goodbye, I'm done. I've done. That's it, I'm done. Goodbye, I'm done. So he's not happy. He's not a happy bunny. I'd rather to adopt a child than get it, saying, she's not my daughter anymore. Come hither more. I here do give thee that all my heart. This is a sort of almost like a parody of a wedding ceremony where the father would be giving away the daughter, and I do give thee with all my heart, which thou already have in my heart. I would keep from thee. I think, and again, I see productions where this is almost performed like a contemporary marriage ceremony where there would be hand holding and they would normally like fasten hands together as part of the marriage ceremony. I kind of imagine all of that kind of stuff. For your sake, Jewel, I am glad at soul I have no other child, for thy escape would teach me tyranny to hang clogs on them. So he's saying, I'm glad that I don't have any other child because it's all this Desdemona. Like, you've taught me that I can't trust. If I had another child, I couldn't trust her, basically. Clogs being heavy shoes, so I don't really running off with anybody. I wouldn't want another daughter running off. I have done, my lord. Let me speak like yourself and lay a sentence which as agrees or step may help these lovers into your favour. So there's wise words from the Duke. And notice we've got a rhyming couplet. The rob that smiles steals something from the thief. He robs himself that spends a bootless grief. So the bootless grief means that you don't need to be sad about this. You're saying, and also, smile and be happy about it. That's better for everybody, essentially. I'm really simplifying it. But, Brabantio, you're wasting your time with this. So let the Turk of Cyprus us beguile. We lose it not as long as we can smile. He bears the sentence well that nothing bears, but the free comfort from which from thence he hears. But he bears both the sentence and the sorrow that to pay grief must of poor patience borrow. This is really rhyming here, isn't it, as well? So it's more blank verse. These sentences to sugar or to gall, being strong on both sides, are equivocal. But words are words. I never yet did hear that the bruised heart was pierced through the ear. I humbly beseech you, proceed to the affairs of state. Brabantio is not happy. So he is not happy. He is not pleased about the situation. So now the scene shifts to talking about the military matters. The Turk with the most mighty preparation makes for Cyprus. And because Othello knows, he says he knows how to defend the place, basically. Saying, you're the general to actually do this. Othello is, obviously, he's just got married and he's going to be sent away to Cyprus, but he says, I crave fit disposition for my wife, due reference of place and exhibition, such accommodation besought as levels with her breeding. So like, she needs to be looked after. Why are her fathers? Brabantio, because he's so angry, he's not going to look after her. Why Othello goes to war. Desdemona goes, no, I don't want to live there. So you can see Desdemona as being at least a relatively strong female character. And she says, she's got an idea. She's now proposing something to the Duke. That I love the more to live with him. My downright violence and storm of fortune may trumpet to the world. My heart subdued even to the very quality of my lord. She's saying, I love Othello with all my heart. To the point, I saw Othello's visage in his mind. So she knows the true man. If I be left behind a moth of peace and he go to war, with an antithesis there, the rights for why I love him are bereft me, and I a heavy interim shall support by his dear absence. Let me go with him. Desdemona confides, what am I talking about? She subverts social norms by being a woman, and she's saying, I've married Othello, he's going to battle, I want to go with him. I've just married him, I want to go with him. Don't leave behind. I don't want to be a moth of peace, like just waiting for, while he's at war, I'm here worried about him all the time, waiting for him to return. We've just got married. I want to be with him. Let I have your voice, vouch me heaven, I therefore beg it not to please the palate of my appetite, nor to comply with heat the young effects in me defunct and proper satisfaction. He ends up saying, Othello says, I'd like her to go with me. Don't think it's because I'm, for want of a better word, don't think it's because I'm randy, effectively. I say it's not just for sexual reasons. He's saying this is because they're in love. And even if she's with me, I will your serious and great business. I will your serious and, sorry, I've messed this bit up. And heaven defend your good souls that you think I will see your serious and great business scant, for she is with me. He's saying, and don't worry, she'll be with me, but I won't neglect my duties. And you have, be it as you shall privately determine either for her stay or going. The affair cries haste and speed must answer it. He's saying, you can decide whether she goes with you or not. We've got to deal with this problem as soon as possible. I don't mind either way. Like the Duke is saying, you must away tonight with all my heart. So they're going to go. So that's important. So Othello is going to be Desdemona is going to be accompanying Othello to Cyprus. So please, your grace, my ancient, a man he is of honesty and trust. Oh dear, dramatic irony here. To his conveyance I assign my wife. Oh dear, oh dear. Oh no. But, everyone thinks Iago is honest, including Othello. Like, everyone thinks that Iago is honest. He is known for his honesty. Let it be so. Good night to everyone. A noble signor, virtue. This is a great bit. This is also written. It's a rhyming couplet. It's also it's a heroic couplet. They called it as well because it's blank verse. If virtue no delighted beauty lack, your son-in-law is far more fair than black. The Duke again reinforcing this idea of going against contemporary attitudes. The idea of Othello is black, therefore he is evil, and he's saying. It's going against that. He's saying, and they, who is the fairest of them all? There's a cultural trope of lightness being associated with good and darkness being associated with evil. So Shakespeare subverts this of saying that, he's your, first of all, he's actually lending authority to the marriage as well, saying he's your son-in-law, right? And he is good. He is a good man. He is not bad. So it's ironic, obviously, because of his ethnicity, is saying, and that's the prejudice of the time, but he's saying he's a good man. Virtue no delighted beauty lack, so he's thinking about Desdemona there as well. But the Duke really validates the relationship and validates Othello's noble qualities as well, albeit it is coded in the prejudiced attitudes and language of the time. But, for the time there, the Duke is saying, Othello is a good man, you should accept him as your son-in-law. A Jew brave more, use Desdemona well. That's a bit sexual, actually. First Senator, you're being a bit saucy there. But again, they're using that epithet, calling him by his race. But even though the senator actually really likes Othello, however, Brabantio's version is more. Again, it's more like sowing the seeds. I said there's a theme of suggestion in the play. Look to her more. If thou hast eyes to see, it's another heroic couplet here. If thou hast eyes to see, she has deceived her father, and may thee. So the nugget of infidelity, of Desdemona cheating on Othello, is planted in his mind. But it's Brabantio. But Brabantio's been programmed, hasn't he, already by Iago? So it's really, you could argue that it's Iago setting this up. My life upon her faith. So everyone goes, honest Iago, oh dear, dramatic irony again. My Desdemona must I leave to thee. So Othello and Desdemona leave. Then Iago, what sayest thou, noble heart? This is ironic because Iago actually doesn't like Roderigo at all. Roderigo is like his simpering henchman. What will I do, thinkest thou? Why, go to bed and sleep. Roderigo, I will incontinently drown myself. Iago dismisses this as being kind of unmanly. Well, if I does, I shall never love thee after. It's sort of sardonic, isn't like dry humour of saying, so, well, if you kill yourself, I can't be a friend then after that, can I? Why, thou silly gentleman? It is silliness that you can see this is all prose compared to the blank verse, because this is like ordinary chat, isn't it? It is silliness to live when to live is torment. Roderigo is like a parody of I think I said before, he's a parody of the courtly lover, as in, you imagine that stereotypical Renaissance lover at the window with a lute and roses and singing songs and being romantic and everything like that, and trying to attract and woo a lady like that. To me, Roderigo is like he's a parody of that. He's over emotional. He's actually the complete opposite of Othello, because Othello, he's like a real man who's had like real adventures. So Desdemona like finds that really, it's for want of a better word, sexy. She finds that really attractive, and Roderigo is like the complete opposite of this. He's like a wet blanket who is just a rich guy who fancies Desdemona, and he's just been making professions of love, sending gifts. Actually, we find out as well, not gifts. That's that'd be too advanced for the time. Not sending like comedy gifts. He's been sending gifts, as in presents, Desdemona to try and charm her. Oh, villainous! I've looked upon the world for 4 times 7 years. So, maths fans, how old is Iago according to the play? Maths fans, working out, it's 28. According to the play, and since I could distinguish betwixt the benefit and injury, I've never found man that knew how to love himself. Ere I would say I would drown myself for the love of a guinea hen. Guinea hen, yes, it could be saying, it could be an animal, but he's saying a prostitute. So that, I wouldn't drown myself for a prostitute. That could be slang for a prostitute in the era. You see, I would change my humanity with a baboon. And baboons they had a reputation for being, again, very sexual animals, as in, well, not as in like, no, attractive, I mean as in they did it a lot. So the baboon. What shall I do? I confess it is my shame to be so fond, but it is not in my virtue to amend it. Virtue, a fig. Like being good. I can't fix this situation myself. So that if we will plant nettles or so, let us set hyssop and weed up time. So you've got nature imagery of here as well. And you basically have Iago saying, if you give in to your baser instincts, we can do like really stupid things, preposterous conclusions, but we have reason to cool our raging motions, our carnal stings, unbitted lusts. Wherever I take this, you would call love to be a sect or scion. So he's saying, but we can, we have human reason. We have human reason to alleviate these problems. It cannot be. It is merely a lust of the blood and a permission of the will. Come, be a man. So he's saying like to kill himself would be unmanly. Iago's world is very misogynistic, isn't it? His world is like that. Drown myself, drown cats and blind puppies. Iago is not a member of the RSPCA. I profess be my, I profess thee thy friend, or the Venetian equivalent anyway. I profess thee my friend, and I confess me knit to thy deserving with cables of perdurable toughness. This is real like hyperbole, and it's also again dramatic irony. Like he is not really Roderigo's friend. I can never better stead thee than now. Caesura here, because there's a pause. Put money in thy purse. Remember we said about the theme of suggestion and implanting thoughts in people's heads. Put money in thy purse. Follow thou the wars. Defeat thy favour with an usurped beard. So he's saying, disguise yourself. Join the wars. Come over to Cyprus. Disguise yourself. Put a fake beard on. I know that sounds a bit of a flimsy thing, but in Shakespearean theatre, if a character's in disguise, people do not see through the disguise. That is a convention. So in some productions where it's modern dress, a character will just, put a hat on or something, or just have different colour hair or a wig, and they look basically like the same person. But it's a Shakespearean convention of, if they're in disguise, no one recognises them. So no one's going to know it's Roderigo. There's no doubt about that. So he's going to put a false beard on. Just imagine him going to the false beard shop in Venice. You go, okay, I've got my fake beard now. I say, put money in thy purse. So notice, the deliberate repetition of the same phrase. There's this mental programming going on. I really like this bit, actually. It cannot be that Desdemona should long continue for her love to the Moor. So we got parenthesis. We get his speech is interrupted by this recurring phrase. Put money in thy purse. Nor he is to her. So he actually interrupts himself there with the parenthesis. It was a violent commencement in her, and thou shalt see an answerable situation. Put but money in thy purse. So this emphasis is reinforcing this idea. These Moors are changeable in their words. Notice Shakespeare has it so the gap is getting shorter between the repetition. Fill thy purse with money. The food to him now is as luscious as locusts, shall be to him shortly as bitter as coloquintida. And coloquintida is a very bitter plant, basically. And I think also there's actually, I think there's some prejudice here. I think this is inferring that because Othello originated from Africa, that he would eat insects. I think that's a bit of stereotyping and prejudice there coming through. She must change for youth. So Roderigo's quite young, you see. So she said she doesn't want. Eventually, she's going to want someone younger as a lover. When she is sated and satisfied with his body, she will find the error of her choice. Therefore, put money in thy purse. It's presented here logically. Look at this repetition. It's brilliant. If thou wilt needs damn thyself, do it more delicate way than drowning. Iago is like he's a devil figure, isn't he? He's like the devil. He's persuading Roderigo to do something bad. He's saying so. Well, why kill yourself? Like, you might as well, if you're going to do something bad, you might as well do it doing what you want. Make all the money thou canst. There's more of the suggestion. If sanctimony and a frau vow betwixt an erring barbarian, so there's more prejudice there of saying that Othello is like a barbarian, and a super subtle Venetian be not too hard for my wits, and all the tribe of hell, he's very devil-like, thou shalt enjoy her. Therefore, make money. So he's presenting as Roderigo's money is the answer to his problem. A pox of drowning thyself, it is clean out of the way. Seek thou rather to be hanged encompassing thy joy than to be drowned and go without her. Saying, so if you drown yourself, you're going to go to hell. That's it. But why not? Why not take the risk? You might as well, if you're going to go to hell anyway, so you might as well just enjoy her. Do that. That's better, isn't it? At least you get your fun. So you can see the Iago is a tempting devil figure. Will thou be fast on my hopes if I depend on the issue? Thou art sure of me. Oh yeah. Go make money. I have told thee often, I retell thee again. I hate the Moor. So Iago there's no dramatic irony in that case. I mean, that is absolutely true. My cause is hearted, thine hath no less reason. Let us be conjunctive in our revenge against him. So he's saying, we've got a common enemy here. Let's join forces. If thou canst cuckold him, and that means, have sex with his wife, Desdemona, thou dost myself a pleasure, me a sport. So he says, you will enjoy yourself. For me, that's fun because it's going to upset him. It's going to cause him pain. We'll have more of this. Oh, yeah, also, yeah, traverse, go. And traverse is like travel, go. Provide thy money. So that reinforcement, that suggestion, we'll have more of this tomorrow. Adieu. Where shall we meet in the morning? At my lodging. Go to, farewell. Do you hear, Rodrigo? What say you? No more of drowning, do you hear? I am changed. Go to, farewell. Put money enough in your purse. Rodrigo is so dopey and so convinced. I'll sell all my land. So Iago has absolutely played him for a fool. Thus do I ever make my fool my purse. Brilliant line there. Metaphorical. For I might, so he's really, Rodrigo's like a cash cow for him. For I mine own gain knowledge should I profane if I would time expend with such a snipe, but for my sport and profit. He's saying like, there is no way I'd hang around with Rodrigo if it wasn't suiting my purpose. So, we talk about Machiavellian villains, and think about Niccolo Machiavelli and do whatever you can to succeed. In Iago's case, is that he's just using Rodrigo. He's just milking him for money. He hates him. But then also to re-emphasise what was it, in case there was any doubt about Iago talking to Rodrigo when he said, I hate them all, it's here in the soliloquy as well. So this is Iago's soliloquy. I hate the more, and his thought abroad that twixt my sheets has done my office. So he says there's rumours that Othello has slept with Iago's wife. I know not if it be true, but I, for mere suspicion in that kind, will do it for surety. Iago has no proof. So even in this scene where we've had the idea of the Duke saying, hang on, you can't say this without evidence, Iago doesn't need proof, like Brabantio. These bad characters, these racist, prejudiced characters and these antagonistic characters, they don't need evidence. They've just got prejudice. That's all they need. He holds me well. The better shall my purpose work on him. So he holds me when he's Othello. He means he trusts me. So this is going to work. This will work better. So this is really like Iago's thought process. Cassio's a proper man. So he's like a good guy, So the Caesura, let me see now. To get his place and to plume over. So this is like proper villain territory, isn't it? Like he's talking through his plans here. He goes, yeah, so to get his place and to plume up my will. So plume up as in like promote myself, like Machiavelli's ideas. That he is too familiar with his wife. Yeah, so he hath a person as smooth disposed to be suspected, framed to make women false. So he thinks, oh yeah, Cassio, he's too familiar with Desdemona. That's something I can work with. The more is of a free and open nature, thinks men honest but seem to be so. So unfortunately, like Othello's good qualities here are being exploited. So Othello is trusting and positive about people, but it's condemned as a sort of weakness by Iago, and would as tenderly be led by the nose as asses are. So there's lots of bestial, as in like animal references in the play, and Othello is being compared to like an ass, being led by the nose. So he's saying, I'm going to play Othello. I'm going to lead him by the nose like an ass, like a donkey, and I'm going to trick him. And then you've got the Caesura here. Well, actually, no, that's not Caesura. That's actually an end-stop line. I have it. So he's thought of his plan. It is engendered. Engendered also has sexual connotations because it actually suggests pregnancy as well. This is a nice rhyming couplet. The Helen night must bring this monstrous birth to the world's light. So birth, engendered. So it's extended metaphor as well. We've got antithesis here as well. So the idea of, and again, linking Iago to the idea of being a devil, being the devil, or representing the devil, or being sympathetic for the devil. Sympathy for the devil. And the idea of, again, Helen must bring this monstrous birth to the world's light. His plans are now in action, and we will find those out as we go on. Well, thank you for joining me for that. That was a long video, but hopefully you found it useful. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.